Okay, today, topic 1.6 Principles of American Government. Pretty much what 1.6 is, kind of very basic but very critical for the exam. Separation of powers and checks and balances, and particularly in checks and balances, the process of impeachment. So, what I've done for you as far as separation of powers is I've given you a nice little picture here and then went down here and did the checks and balances here as well. But all I'm going to say is just a couple of little simple things for separation of powers. Understand that no one branch dominates other branches, which means that no one branch has all the power in the government. We've split it up three different ways. So the L in legislative stands for making laws, the E in executive stands for enforcing those laws, and the J in judicial stands for interpreting, but we said judging those laws too. So take the kind of the small clues that they give you and work with that. Now, as far as checks and balances goes, all right, understand that this is the process encompassed in our nation's government where one branch can't dominate another because there are limitations placed on it. Like other branches can limit the actions or powers of another branch in a series of checks and balances that we have here. So what this picture does is it does a nice job of giving you, okay, here's legislative branch checks against the executive, executive branch checks against the judicial, and judicial branch checks against the executive too. When you're going into the exam, what you want to have is probably 2 to 3 loaded up, ready to go. So 2 legislative checks against the executive and judicial, 2 executive against the legislative and judicial, and then 2 judicial versus executive and legislative as well. Now, there are a couple of forgotten checks that they don't write in this pictogram that I've given you here that I would just basically tell you, write down. I said the ones that the forgotten checks here is this. Remember that the executive branch has the check of not enforcing a particular law. Remember, the E in executive stands for enforcement of law. And the executive can choose not to enforce laws. And we saw that right after the Civil War, about 100 years, where they chose not to enforce any kind of civil rights legislation for African Americans. They chose to look the other way. So it's one of the forgotten checks that has been used throughout our history. And the other one that I would say, too, is with the legislative branch check over the judicial. Remember that they can change their appellate jurisdiction. So they cannot change the original jurisdiction that's stated in the Constitution. They cannot change the fact that the Supreme Court can be the first court to hear a case involving states or the United States or an ambassador or treason or things like that as well. So they can't do that. But what they can do is all other cases outside the ones stipulated in the Constitution can be changed, can be taken away. And we saw that shortly after 9/11, where the United States went into Iraq and began rounding up individuals they thought were responsible for the attack. And they wouldn't let them get into the American courts. They tried them in military courts in Guantanamo Bay. So they're able to do that. Now, the big one that the test is going to outline as far as checks and balances are impeachment. Now, I would tell you, and I think I have it up here. Yes, I'll show you here in a second. I do have a website you can go to, and I will link it to this post that shows you exactly the impeachment of Donald Trump explained, like who's involved, why he's being impeached, what it takes to be impeached, and all the politics that go into it. So it's a really, really good website. It takes 2 seconds to get through and moves there. So why was he impeached? What did he actually say? What's his defense? And so it gives you a wide variety of things too, as well. And actually, what did he say? Is it actually charges that you can use? Now, it is in the Constitution. There's language in the Constitution. Article 1 says the House is in charge, at least for filing for impeachment. So what that means is, should we or should we not go forward in the process? Then Article 1, Section 3 says, okay, Senate, you guys are going to be responsible for the trial, and you need at least 2/3 of members present to convict that person. In Article 2, Section 2, it says the president has all these judicial powers but cannot pardon anybody in cases of impeachment. So there we see it up again. And then Article 2, Section 4 says, okay, the president and vice president can be removed from office of impeachment for treason, bribery, and other high crimes. Now, the one thing about these high crimes, please don't make the mistake that high crimes are like major, major, major crimes, like the president burned down the building, or the president committed murder, or the president some sort of major retail theft. That's not that. What it is like things like perjury, lied under oath, didn't obey orders commanded to him, abuse of authority, which can mean a lot of things. dereliction of duty, didn't live up to your responsibilities, failure to supervise, moral turpitude, and conduct unbecoming as well. You see a lot of those still present in our military today, and the president is the nation's highest military commander, so therefore they're going to be held to those standards as well. So high crimes are a little bit different than what you think, and they're open for interpretation. Open for interpretation. So that is all I got on separation powers, checks and balances. I would definitely tell you when you go into the exam, you have to have 2 to 3 checks on each branch ready to go and really, really understand the impeachment process. Remember, the House files for the impeachment process. They hold the investigation. Was a crime committed? If it is, should we move forward in the process? If they vote yes, it is given to the Senate to hold the trial. The Chief Justice of the Supreme Court will come down and act as the judge, and they will have a trial in the Senate, and ultimately a vote will be taken. And if 2/3 of individuals vote yes, we should convict, then that person is gone. If they don't, that person stays in office. So there we go. So hey, listen, happy Friday. Have a wonderful weekend. I do miss you. I will see you next week. I'm probably going to post something tomorrow. You don't worry. Don't have to worry if you don't want to access that. Don't worry about that if you don't. But I'm just trying to put up as much as I possibly can for if you want to review, here's your resources to review. I'll attach these notes, and next week, right around about Monday, Tuesday, start looking at Unit 1 review for AP Classroom, where it will give you multiple different questions on whether you retain the information that's needed to know. All right, take care.